I'm Sarah Bedford, and I'm here today to talk with California Congressman John Duarte about the Farm Bill. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, Sarah. How you doing?
I'm great. So first off, I just want to start with, what are some of your top priorities that you think absolutely need to be included in the farm appropriations bill this year?
Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to get reference prices up for a lot of commodities on the commodity loan rates. We've seen inflation hit households across America. We've seen the same thing with farms. Energy costs are up, fertilizer costs are up. Everything is more expensive, including the people they hire. Everyone needs a little more to get by these days. And so we've got to get the reference prices up, a lot of the program crops up, so that the farmers can know that they can plant their crops, and whatever the world disruptions are, whatever happens, and things have been pretty crazy these last couple of years in markets and geopolitically, that they're sure to have a survivable price for their crops. They can continue to deliver the abundance and the food security we need in America. So that's one of the top issues. Another one is we need to make sure the crop insurance program really gives farmers the security they need. The crop insurance program hasn't been rewritten since the last farm bill, and there's a lot of interest in whole farm insurance. Some of the things farmers face historically have been, rain, sleet, snow, drought, and the farm insurance program does a pretty good job of these things. But a lot of things farmers face are just, the infrequent events like 9/11 or COVID, where the food system was really disrupted, the consumers were disrupted. There's all kinds of social upheaval and economic uncertainty. And many of these farm families got the whip end of that. They, we saw milk flowing in the gutters because everyone stopped going to restaurants and everybody needed more milk in the supermarket chains. So many of these dairymen simply couldn't sell the crop. Many of the bottlers couldn't package it with the current systems they were using, and had to refocus their lines. So we see a lot of upheaval and disruption. And so I want to see Farm Bill cover more whole farm insurance or revenue insurance, not at a great price, but 60% of the regular income if we have kind of a black swan economic or geopolitical event that couples with often weather events and natural disasters that really put farm families under stress. And so those are a couple of the big providers. I'm also working on the Gates Act. The Farm Bill has a lot of conservation titles in it that are very, very important to help family farmers participate in some of the conservation reserve programs, the EQIP programs out here in California, the Central Valley, where I represent. We're really focusing on recharge basins and water sustainability. And we want to make sure that farmers aren't excluded from the incentives to participate in these programs simply because they had a high revenue year a couple of years ago. Maybe they made over $900,000. We want to eliminate that limit for families that have 75% of more of their revenue in agriculture or ag and food related industries, so that our rural towns, our successful families that make up the jobs and the economic base of these rural communities, can participate in the incentive programs to help deal with whatever the environmental and sustainability initiatives are in that area. And that's where the land is, and that's where the families are that can really make a difference. So I think the Gates Act, I'm co-sponsoring that with Congressman Jimmy Panetta, California, Jim Costa. It's a very bipartisan effort. David Rouser is involved in that. Chuck Edwards, Lori Chavez, DeReamer. We've got a lot of great co-sponsors, both sides of the aisle. So I think that's highly viable. So those are some of the initiatives on the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is a big document. It's done once every 5 years, and I think we're going to get a good Farm Bill across the line this year, but with a tight majority. I got to say, in the Agriculture Committee, where we have Chairman G.T. Thompson, it's one of the most congenial and amicable committees we have. I'm hoping we can keep that spirit alive and kind of carry through a Farm Bill that makes sense on nutrition as well as on the production side of food.
One of the thorny issues that could come up during the passage of this bill is what to do about SNAP benefits, food stamps. There are some conservative hardliners who want to see some deeper cuts to spending in food assistance, maybe, for example, taking away the ability of states to grant so many exemptions to the work requirements and things like that. Do you see the food assistance fight potentially imperiling this bill?
I think a lot of us, more in the center of the debate, see the food assistance issues have already been greatly dealt with in the Fiscal Responsibility Act. That was a bipartisan compromise between the Senate, the House, and President Biden, where we dealt with the work requirement for food assistance. We dealt with the ability of the states to grant waivers to certain numbers of their participants in the food assistance program. So there's always going to be an interest in going a little further one direction or another. But I think the heart of the artichoke's been taken out of that greatly with the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and we'll see. But I don't see huge sea changes coming on that. I think there will be a bipartisan consensus to get it across the line.
And then one other potentially even thornier issue that a handful of House Republicans have brought up is potentially because the FDA is included in this bill, using the Farm Bill as a vehicle to block the ability for the abortion pill to be sent in the mail. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that issue needs to stand on its own. I've requested that it be presented as a separate amendment that can be voted up or down. I don't think it'll survive that. If it gets pushed into this farm bill, I don't think it survives the Senate or the conference process after the Senate to actually become law. And I think it's going to be a sticking point all the way through. So I understand there's some folks who want to see that included in the farm bill. I don't believe the FDA should have shoehorned it in here, and I don't believe that we should be responding this much to it. If there's a bill or a standalone bill where someone wants to deal with that, great. But rural America and a lot of families are relying on the Farm Bill to go through in a way that makes sense in terms of our food production and nutrition system. And we shouldn't be distracting ourselves with social issues that need to be dealt with elsewhere.
For lay people like myself who don't necessarily follow, the agricultural sector day to day, I think some of us were surprised to learn how consolidated elements of the food production industry have become when, for example, an outbreak of COVID at one pork packing facility, in North Dakota can cause a nationwide meat shortage. What can the Farm Bill do? You mentioned crop insurance being one solution to this, but what can the Farm Bill do to strengthen supply chains and maybe deal with some of that market consolidation that can, in rare circumstances, pose a threat to food supply?
Well, the Farm Bill really shouldn't try and steer industry structure. If there's consolidation in any industry, including automobiles or tennis shoes or anything you want to look at, there's always consolidation forces. What we do want to make sure is that our regulatory schemes don't disadvantage new players coming in. We don't want to prevent cooperatives for stepping into the meatpacking industry. There's many agricultural cooperatives. I belong to one as an almond grower called Blue Diamond. And I want to make sure that the Farm Bill doesn't try and create industry structure, but that it liberalizes it and lets the industries and the players within the industries participate as they will without regulatory constraints. When we start looking at things like, animal husbandry standards coming out of California and determining how egg producers and pork producers can serve our markets here in California, a major U.S. market, that starts to drive consolidation. That makes it harder for the small players to get the capital they need to adapt and to participate in the industry, while the bigger players can kind of suck it up and, they're big, they're diversified, they can access the capital. At the end of the day, that just gets put into the price, and the consumers, oftentimes working families who are already at the edge of their budgets, end up paying that price. So again, I'm not against consolidation, but I'm against policies on the government's end that encourage consolidation and limit who can play in some of these industries and how they structure themselves to play in some of these industries.
And finally, there's been some talk about using the Farm Bill to sort of claw back some of the climate-related spending that was included in the Inflation Reduction Act, maybe tackling some sort of climate regulations through the Farm Bill. How big a role do you think climate change should play in the Farm Bill?
Well, I want to keep it out. I think a lot of these green energy, these subsidies for solar panels, these requirements put upon energy utilities and municipals to go green has fallen on the backs of the working families in America. We're already seeing enormous housing cost increases, energy cost increases, food cost increases. So a lot of these ESG metrics are still very vague. There's a lot of dialogue about what can be done or what is happening and what's driving global warming. We know it's getting warmer. I'm a farmer. I can see it in a couple crops I farm, but can we do anything about it? And how much further can we crush the working families in America, especially in California here in the Central Valley, where I've got a fairly low income district in a fairly rich state. My families in my district are getting crushed by energy costs. Pacific Gas Electric, the big utility here in California, has just announced that next year there will be a 32% increase in their power costs. And so we've already got a 24 cent per kilowatt power cost for families that work on these farms, that live in these 105-degree climates during the summer, can't afford to run the air conditioner as it is. And now they're going to see a 32% increase. They're going to see a 32-cent kilowatt hour cost on their homes. This is unfair. We're carrying more of our burden, again, more so in California than anywhere else. But all of these inflationary cost drivers fall on the back of working families and really hurt the money available for nutrition in their families. They're driving homelessness. They're driving affordability. I am against using the Farm Bill to pursue vague ESG or even some of the DEI stuff. Will not make food affordable for the families who need affordability the most.
Well, Congressman Duarte, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. Good to be here.
I'm Sarah Bedford for the Washington Examiner.